Good afternoon, everybody. This is Boomersdaddy with Spreadsheet Sports coming to you for week 4. Hope you guys are enjoying your Saturday afternoon. Obviously, I am hard at work watching college football. TVs are going right over here. So, got a lot to get to today. Obviously, hope you enjoyed the cash game picks. If you put as much extra time into this week as I have to kind of fix everything that's been going on. Last week I didn't play as much because I was in Colorado. The week before it was obviously a bad week because nothing happened the way it was supposed to. Dove right into everything as soon as I got back from Colorado, and kind of feel that we are going to bounce back this week and have a fantastic week. Obviously, if you are playing on multiple sites, then make sure you are paying attention to price. Don't just because a guy is a great play on one site doesn't mean he's a great play on every site across the industry. So got a lot of big tournaments going on this weekend on FanDuel, DraftKings, Draft Pod. It's going to be my first weekend playing over there. I know Fantasy Aces is having a great one. Star Drafts, Fantasy Hub, which is awesome. It is... Man, there's a lot going on. NFL is here. We're in full swing. We've got bye weeks this week. We've got a lot going on. So I'm going to have a nice little GPP player pool for you. Obviously, everybody that's in the cash game player pool that I put out in my article is in play for tournaments as well. You're going to need to mix in some value to get the lower ownership players and make sure that you are doing everything that you need to do. So the big thing here is going to be mostly we have to capitalize off of the price decreases that we've seen through the industry, either through bad performances or bias, and make sure that in GPPs we don't fall into that recency bias that a lot of people are going to be falling into. So players like Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Freeman, Randle Cobb, those players are going to be extremely highly owned in tournaments, just because of the fact that when players go off on Monday nights, when players go off in primetime games, or when players go off that is out of the norm anyways, then we tend to see a drastic uptick in ownership percentage because, believe it or not, I've had to convince myself of this every single week this season. I live in a bubble. And I know that sounds very odd and weird, but most of the people that I talk to on a daily basis consistently, we're all in this DFS bubble. We all like a lot of different plays. There's some plays that I like that some others don't like, and vice versa. But we're all always bouncing things off of each other. And the big thing is we make up a very small percentage of those of the population that is playing on these sites. And most of the time, what we have to realize is just because we like somebody and we've heard of somebody and we hear of somebody all week long doesn't mean that the crowd necessarily and the majority of the public thinks the same way we do. There's stigmas in the NFL, oh, the Raiders suck, oh, the 49ers, Kaepernick is horrible play, and this and that. And you have to look beyond that. You have to, I've misjudged ownership percentages at times just because of the fact that I hear a name so much throughout the week, either through podcasts that I've done or doing research and articles and seeing this and finding things, and then other people talk about them, that it isn't always necessarily going to be they're not going to necessarily be as highly owned as I believe they were. So a good example of this was Tyrod Taylor in week 1. I believe he was like 6 or 7% owned in the Millie Maker on DraftKings, and I literally thought he was going to be close to 15 to 20% owned. So I absolutely faded him. And there are some things that you have to kind of look beyond. Now the good thing is we do have a new part of the NFL tool that will be debuted next week. Ownership percentages will be very, very, very close to what I believe they are going to be based on some research I will be doing Friday morning. I will put that in a spreadsheet, and that will go into the update that comes out on Friday. You should be able to Friday or Saturday morning be able to automatically refresh, and the ownership percentages that we are projecting for our players should be very, very close to what you see depending on the size of the tournament. So it's something I've talked about with Brian this week, and it's something that we're going to input, and I believe it's going to help us out a lot when we're building our GPP lineup. So without further ado, let's get to it. For quarterback, obviously, everybody that's in that cash game, Aaron Rodgers, Tyrod Taylor. Yes, I did say Tyrod. You've got Derek Carr. Derek Carr is going to be a very, very popular play. If you think you're being sneaky with that because he's a quote-unquote Raider, don't. I think he's going to be extremely highly owned just because of the fact that he's going against the Bears. The Bears' defense is a dumpster fire. They just got rid of Jared Allen, so it's not going to be as sneaky as you think it's going to be. As far as those three, the only one I would really put into tournaments is Tyrod and Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, just because of the fact that he's Aaron Rodgers. He's the best quarterback in football, not named Tom Brady, and he could go off for 30-plus fantasy points at any given moment. Don't get used to seeing 5 TDs. Obviously, we know that's not the norm, but 2 to 3 with 300 yards passing is not out of the realm of possibilities by any stretch of the imagination, and I think that's probably pretty close to what his floor is going to be going against a bad 49ers defense. So I like Aaron Rodgers for both cash games and GPPs, and it will allow you to have a Sunday night hammer going in after everybody's kind of shot everything through the day on Sunday. So another couple sneaky quarterbacks I like. Matt Ryan, obviously, he's got the best receiver in football. I don't like saying that because I'm a big Cowboys fan, but with Dez out, Julio Jones is the best wide receiver in football right now, and he actually has a halfway decent quarterback throwing to him. Matt Ryan continues to go extremely low owned with Julio going extremely highly owned. If you are going to play Julio in tournaments, I strongly recommend you pair him up, at least in a couple of those lineups, with Matt Ryan. Just because you have Julio does not mean that you can't spend up at quarterback. You have to find some value in there at other spots, but it is definitely doable this week and definitely possible. One of the big things with the Houston Texans, I almost said Astros. Wow. One of the big things with the Houston Texans is the fact that they've got a great front four. The mid three are and the back four are very, very, very shaky. They can be thrown on. We've seen that this year, but I do believe that Matt Ryan and Julio Jones could have a very, very good game, especially since they're at home in the dome on the turf. It's something I talked about in the preseason. Make sure you take advantage of that if you can on some of your lineups. So, another couple I like. There's going to be 3 here. Wow. Okay. Sorry. There's going to be 3 here that I like, and it's going to depend on roster construction and what kind of goes as far as actives and inactives over coming in tomorrow morning. I'm just going to list them off and give you a little bit of a snippet. I don't think Colin Kaepernick is going to play as bad as he did last week. I don't think he's a great quarterback as far as NFL standards are concerned, but he's got the ability to have some rushing yards and some passing yards, and I think for some reason he just tears up Adam Capers' defense. I don't know what it is. He can't do it to anybody else, but he does it to the Packers. He's like 3-0 against the Packers, averaging 300 yards passing and 100 yards rushing or something like that. It's absolutely crazy and nuts. So I don't expect him to play as bad as he did last week, and he's going to be extremely low owned. If you can play him naked or you can play him with one of his wide receivers, But that is going to be a large field GPP tournament play. If you're playing in the Millie Maker, then that's where I would play it. If you're playing in a qualifier, I would play him there too. But you want to make sure that you are capitalizing off of the recency bias. There is not going to be a lot of people on Colin Kaepernick. So next one is going to be Russ Wilson. Played the Bears last week. Obviously, the Seahawks shut them out. I don't believe they're going to shut out the Lions this week. I still think they're going to win, but I do believe he's going to have a better overall game. He started to get on the same page with Jimmy Graham. That's something that we want to see. Jimmy Graham did not forget how to catch footballs. He did not forget how to score touchdowns. He's just getting used to getting into that offense and being able to be utilized correctly. I don't think it's a good fit for him, but it's not that he's not going to have some of those games. Russ Wilson, obviously, like Colin Kaepernick, he can run the ball. He's going to protect himself. He can throw the ball. I don't expect over 250 yards, but 225, 240 with a touchdown and about 75 to 80 rushing yards isn't out of the realm of possibilities there. You need that. You're going to need those rushing yards from Russell Wilson. He's going to be lower owned, higher owned than Kaepernick, but he's still going to be low owned. And if you pair him up with Doug Baldwin, Jimmy Graham, then you've got that really, really nice Monday night hammer going into Monday night. So the last one I've got is kind of a little sneaky. I'm going to capitalize off of what the public kind of thinks a little bit here, and I'm going to go with Eli Manning. Eli Manning is obviously going to be hopefully playing from behind. Tom Coughlin is stubborn. He's going to try to run the ball. And when he can't run the ball, then he's going to leave it up to Eli to throw the ball. Well, with Victor Cruz out, he's going to be targeting one person, and one person in particular, and that's Odell Beckham Jr. Obviously, Odell Beckham has not had the breakout game that we have expected him to have yet this year, but it is coming, and I promise you it is coming, and when it does, you want to make sure that you have capitalized off of it. The great thing is Eli will go low owned. He'll be under 2% owned in big tournaments, and I mean, Odell can't throw it to himself. Well, he probably could, but he's not going to. So people don't like to pick on the Buffalo Bills defense in the Ralph. So we want to make sure that we capitalize off of that a little bit. And since they're going to be playing from behind, that is not a bad way to go. The strength of the Bills defense is their front seven. That secondary is very aggressive. They do try to make the big play, make the big hit, but they can be beat. We've seen that before. Obviously, they got up to a big lead against not only Indianapolis but also Miami, and later on in the game they allowed some passing yards. So I look for the trend to kind of continue with that. So running back here. I'm going to let you know in big tournaments, anything that is tournament style, that's not a higher level buy-in. In the Millie Maker, I've talked about this in baseball. You've got to take a stand, and I'm taking a stand to fade Carlos Williams in big GPPs. The reason is because LaShawn McCoy's out and because he's been the most efficient runner in the NFL this year, he's going to be extremely highly owned. Think of it as a Devontae Adams scenario in week 1 when Jordy went out and he's underpriced. The exact same thing is happening here, and it's not Carlos Williams' fault, but with that said, he's going to be highly owned. Now, for cash games, I'm all in. He's going to bust value, and it's going to hit very, very early in the game. And I would not be surprised if he exceeds value and gets you 4 or 5x his salary. Okay, but for GPPs, it's not going to help me to have a player that scores 18 fantasy points and he's 42% owned. He's 38% owned. Okay. I can get those 18 fantasy points elsewhere. I don't need to make them up all in one spot, but if I can make them up throughout the course of my lineup, because I'm fading a guy that's highly, highly owned, probably one of the highest owned players of the weekend, then I don't have to worry about it quite as much, and I can move up the leaderboard and it not affect as many people. So I'm fading Carlos Williams in GPPs. I know he's a great play, but I've got another value at running back that I think is as good of a play and could possibly outscore him, and he's been really, really, really close to doing that the last couple weeks. It's Melvin Gordon, okay? Melvin Gordon is one of those that the reason he's going to be a GPP play, and he's not a cash game play yet, is he's not getting any work inside the red zone. As soon as they get in the red zone, Danny Woodhead ends up getting into the game, but all we need is Gordon to bust one of those long runs that he's so capable of doing and get in. He almost had a 50-plus yarder last week. He got tackled by his ankles, and he even came out and said he should have had that one. He almost had one the week before. So it is coming, okay? And I believe once this guy starts getting integrated into the red zone, his price is going to skyrocket. And so we need to take advantage of that while we can. He's got a good matchup this week, and I think that he's going to go extremely low owned. He's still underpriced, so we can get that same value at a low ownership, and we're good to go. So the next one is a correlation play. I've said this a lot. You can go Darren Sproles with the Philadelphia Eagles defense. Washington's front seven is very, very good. They don't allow a lot of rushing yards. The bad thing about it is that he is going to need to be incorporated into the pass game. His week last week could have been even bigger if he hadn't dropped an 80-yard touchdown pass on a wheel route. But he also has the ability to return punts and kicks. And when you get those for touchdowns, if you have the Eagles defense, guess what? You now get 14 points instead of 7 points. So it's 12 points instead of 6 points. I'm thinking football already. So take advantage of that. There's not a lot of those correlation plays that we can take advantage of throughout the year or throughout the league, but the Eagles and Darren Sproles definitely is one that we can take advantage of, and it's already paid off for us a couple times this year. So the next one is Joseph Randle. Randle, obviously, they went away from the I still don't understand. They went away from the run. He had a big game last week, 3 touchdowns. He actually could have had 4, but Darren McFadden got one of his, and then they went away from the run. Don't look for them to do the same thing this week, okay? Look for them to push the ball, run the ball, especially if Drew Brees is active, look for Dallas to try to play a ground control running game, okay? It's what they're good at. It's what they've been good at for the last year and a half, but even more so with Whedon under center and Drew Brees in the lineup, they're going to establish that run, and we need to make sure that we have the ability to take advantage of that as much as possible. So I do like Joseph Randle. The other one I like is Carlos Hyde. Green Bay is actually allowing over 5 yards per carry this year. We've seen Carlos Hyde, as soon as he gets into the open field, he can make people miss. He can barrel over. We saw what he did against the Minnesota defense, which I don't think is that bad. I don't think San Francisco is that good. If you're playing Colin Kaepernick in your GPP lineup, don't put Carlos Hyde in there. Go Carlos Hyde differently than Kaepernick if you're putting out multiple lineups, and make sure that you have everything going with that. I think he could have a good game. I don't expect a Minnesota Vikings type game, but very, very solid, and he should pay off his salary. And if he can get in the end zone a couple times, then I think we're golden. So obviously, I've mentioned a couple wide receivers already. I like Odell Beckham Jr. I think he's due for a breakout game. Keenan Allen is receiving almost 40% of their targets that Phillip Rivers is throwing. Brandon Cooks, only if Drew Brees is playing. We've seen what can happen. We saw what Julio Jones did to that Dallas defense last week. If Drew Brees is in there, look for Brandon Cooks to be one of his primary targets. Torrey Smith, if you're going Colin Kaepernick, I think Torrey Smith, who's that deep threat that they brought over, I think he could have a good game. Colin Kaepernick is not going to hit a lot of people over and over and just kind of build up. He's going to need to hit a couple home runs. So Percy Harvin is somebody with Sammy Watkins out. I absolutely love. Sammy Watkins is going to be on the sideline. I like Percy Harvin, and I like Chris Hogan as well. Robert Woods is also in play. For tight end, Jimmy Graham. We said it. They've started to get on the same page, and I like that Monday Night Hammer. This is one of those areas where you can be contrarian and pay up for somebody. I think it's going to be an extremely, extremely good game. And I think if Jimmy Graham can just he's not going to blow you out with 100 yards, but I think if he can get a couple red zone targets and get in the end zone a couple times, then that would be extremely good. And I kind of expect that to happen. That's the reason they brought him over, was to get the red zone looks, and they just started doing that last week. So Greg Olsen, obviously Carolina Panthers going against the Tampa Bay Bucks. Greg Olsen is going to be this is another example of paying up to be contrarian. Greg Olsen is the second highest priced tight end of the weekend, and it's one of those things that you've got nobody else to catch the ball. Yeah, you've got Billy Brown, but Greg Olsen, he's received I think it's 14 and 15 targets over the last 2 weeks. It's been absolutely crazy, and he can, when Cam is doing Cam things, that means Greg Olsen can be doing Greg Olsen things. So I do like him as well as a tight end. Another one that's going to be extremely low owned just because of the stigma going against the Seattle Seahawks defense is going to be Eric Ebron. I don't think that Matt Stafford's going to have a lot of time to actually throw the ball. And when you don't, then you could dump it off to the back. That makes Theo Riddick in play. They're going to be playing from behind, I believe. Calvin Johnson might be a deep play to pay up. You're going to get him at a low ownership. And Eric Ebron as well. Eric Ebron's going to be over the middle. That's where we've attacked the Seattle defense on numerous occasions. They're very good on the outside. They're very good over the top. They're okay in the middle, but they're more okay as far as run support rather than pass coverage. So I do like Eric Ebron as well. Defense, Seattle, obviously we've mentioned them. Legion of Boom, they're always going to be able to create turnovers. Arizona Cardinals going against St. Louis Rams, who last week couldn't even do anything against the beat up Pittsburgh Steelers defense. I like them as well. Obviously, they've just been creating turnovers and scoring defensive touchdowns. Don't expect another 31 points or whatever you got out of them last week, but I do believe they could be another one of the top defenses this week as well. Philadelphia Eagles are going to be a nice little low-owned play. Not a lot of people are going to be on them because they're like, okay, well, this is a rivalry game and all this other stuff. And we've seen what's happened to that Philadelphia Eagles secondary. They did play a little bit better last week, but they've still got a lot of room for improvement. They're going against Kirk Cousins. I've said it before. Kirk Cousins has turned the ball over more times than anybody else in the NFL since he was drafted, and he hasn't played in as many games. So he's going to throw 2 or 3 interceptions here. You can take it to the bank, and if you get lucky, Sproles will scamper in for a touchdown, and maybe we get a fumble return for a touchdown or an interception return for a touchdown as well. So, and then the last one is going to be the Denver defense. Obviously, they're the best defense in the NFL right now. They are playing like their hair is on fire, and they're creating turnovers. They are getting sacks. It is being absolutely just, it's been fun for them to watch. Chris Harris Jr. is one of the most underrated cornerbacks in the NFL, and it's going to be with Teddy Bridgewater under center, he's become a game manager. I think that they're going to feed Adrian Peterson. We know that Adrian Peterson. I love the guy, but he's going to. He has the chance to fumble. We saw it a couple weekends ago, and it could be a very, very long day for this Minnesota Vikings offense. So. Guys, that's all I got for today. Make sure you check out the article for the cash game plays. They are all in play for GPPs as well. Make sure that you have a great weekend. Check us out at Spreadsheet Sports on Google+, Facebook, and on Twitter at Sheet Sports or at Boomersdaddy. If you have any questions about what I think about a guy, then make sure to hit us up at one of those places, and make sure that your weekend is very profitable. For Spreadsheet Sports, I am Boomersdaddy. Have a good weekend, everybody.